and welcome to the Mall Street Journal, the podcast that brings you all the latest news and reviews for all things American rugby. We are part of the Global Gainline Network and can be found on all your usual platforms, including YouTube, Spotify, and iTunes. So if you haven't already, give us a like or a subscribe, tell a couple of friends about us, or just send us a signed Olive Kelter jersey stuffed with $20 bills. This is episode 14. As always, I'm David Lawrence, along with Kolye down in Texas. Kolye, how are you doing this evening, my fine feathered friend?
Pretty good. Things have been a bit crazy, but pretty good.
Well, sadly, Julia couldn't join us tonight. She's off playing for the Severn River Honey Badgers, a D2/3 team outside of DC. That means she's going to miss our very first guest. I am thrilled to introduce the original sleek sensation himself, the one and only Dallen Stanford. Dallen, it's so good to see you again. Welcome to the Mall Street Journal, and how's life in SoCal?
Thank you for having me, first of all. Life is great. It's awesome to be down in San Diego. Been here for about a month and just absolutely loving the beach, and the vibes here are immaculate.
San Diego's my favorite city.
It's America's favorite city. That's the slogan, right?
Actually, didn't know that, but they deserve it. Dallen, we have a little tradition here of starting with a non-rugby question of the week. So I have to ask, is there a device or a piece of technology that failed you this week?
Yes, so that's a good question. I like the opening as well. Nothing this week that failed me, but it did make me think about something that failed me on a broadcast, which is appropriate because that's what I do. I'll never forget a game I did. It was just coming out of COVID. It was a USA woman playing Stars versus Stripes, Alona Ma's first 15-a-side game. But the broadcast, for some reason, as the game kicked off, I was connected with the stadium announcer who was being loud and, obviously announcing the try and announcing the teams. For some reason, that feed came straight into my ears. So for the 80 minutes, I couldn't hear myself. Chem, I couldn't hear my co-commentator for the whole game. So whatever Sarah Shabbat said, I just nodded because I didn't know what she said. It was the most awkward thing, too, trying to formulate sentences when you can't hear yourself. And I was struggling to think as well. So behind the scenes, which you'll know as a commentator, technology failed us on that game. Nobody knows outside of the people I told, but it was an absolute nightmare.
I am glad I have not had anything like that happen. Kolye, what about you? Do you have any entries for our question of the week?
So I hate to be a stereotype, but I am a teacher, so it's got to be the printer copier.
Totally.
Like that thing, or its new favorite thing right now is you send a print job, you go, or it acts like it's printing from the computer, you go over to the copier and there's nothing there. And in the job log, it claims that nothing's been sent to it, and this repeats about 5 times until it actually prints.
You're like, you know what? Can I just have some chalk and a blackboard at this point?
Mm-hmm.
For me this week, it was actually at band practice. It took me a full 20 minutes to figure out why my amplifier wasn't making any noise. Turned out I hadn't switched it out of standby mode. So the device that failed me this week was my brain.
Appropriate.
Dallen, we also like to usually start with a news segment. I would ordinarily skip this when we have a lovely guest, but this will not wait. There is a new team that's been announced in Super Rugby Americas. They will be the Capybara 15s. I've spent at least 2 days desperately searching for merch. If you haven't seen the logo, pure class all the way. And by the way, capybaras, famous for their ability to calm other animals simply by being near them. I can't wait to see that effect on the rugby pitch.
I love that. Now, hold on. Is that the new Uruguayan team, or which team is that?
It's going to be another Argentinian team.
Oh, Argentinian. Yeah. Okay, great. So remind me. So do they have then 3 teams playing in the league?
By the time the Capybaras debut in 2027, I think that'll make 4.
4. Okay, great. Fantastic. I love how Argentine rugby has obviously grown tremendously in the last decade or so. Their 15-a-side national team's always been amazing, but really good to see how the next level of players come through. And I'm kind of disappointed that the USA, which had a team, the American Raptors in it, unfortunately no longer have a side in it, because I think that's a wonderful competition.
Yeah, and we could use the reps. It was funny because after Los Pumas, or I'm sorry, the Jaguares left Super Rugby, I heard a lot of worry about the state of rugby in Argentina because there's no longer that kind of level competition. When I was looking at this announcement, it's thriving. Argentina is riddled with clubs.
Yeah, you're 100% right with that. Yeah, I got a chance to travel there several years ago for the World Rugby Under-20 Championship, and it is amazing to see how much rugby is played and how they get behind it. And also knowing that soccer is the supports the sport that's followed the most. Kind of like here, we've got obviously football and a bunch of other sports, but it is amazing to see how Argentina are so good, and they've been amazing in the Rugby Championship as well.
I don't know how they keep that consistency too. Los Pumas are so good, and their players are all over the world. It's shocking to me that they can come back together, have a couple of weekends of camp, and then show up and just have a great performance like in the Rugby Championship this year. They're a phenomenal team.
Yeah, I love them.
Anyway, let's get into it. The obvious starting place is Dallen. How are you feeling about USA Rugby? You're an Eagle yourself. Our men struggled a bit this summer, but managed to qualify for the World Cup in Australia in 2027. Some people see a glass that's half full, others half empty. I generally see a glass that's twice as big as it needs to be. Dallen, give us some reasons to feel good about the state of the men's game here in the U.S.
Yes, well, I think there are many things to be proud of and many things to celebrate, and we have to celebrate every win that comes along the way. As we know, with USA Rugby, there are many ups and there are many downs, probably more downs in recent years. So the fact that the USA men's side could qualify for the Rugby World Cup is massive. I spoke to Scott Lawrence last week. He came on to a new show that we launched called the Athletes Lounge on Flow Rugby, and was really great to hear about his positivity. Also, I love his detail-oriented approach. I also like that there's a former Eagle coaching the national side. That's very important as well. We've seen it in sevens, both the women's and the men's sevens programs now led by US coaches, which is great, former internationals. So chatting to Scott as well, it's an uphill battle. Let's be honest. The difference between the top 10 sides in the world and everybody else when it comes to 15s in the men's game is astronomical. When the US takes on, the Englands of the world, Scotland's and the Southern Hemisphere of the world, there's a 40 to 60-point difference, for in all honesty, which is a big difference. And we actually saw that in the Women's Rugby World Cup now recently as well. The top nations, beating the other nations by 40 to 60 points, which is a big buffer. So saying that, I'm happy the US is playing in a Rugby World Cup. It is massive for young rugby fans, for regular rugby fans that find the sport when they watch it to know that, okay, America is playing, they're taking part. You don't need to follow the team that closely though and look at the results, because at 2027 the results there might be some big losses. But saying that, the fact that there now are 24 teams across 6 pools means that there potentially could be a game or two in the pool stages that the US could potentially compete with, and who knows. I know their goal, Project Moonshot, is a semi-final when they host in 2031, but to be honest, I think just the goal should be to make the knockout rounds, to make the quarters, the top 8. That should be their main goal.
It's like you were reading my script. My very next thing was, Scott Lawrence. He's been pursuing his moonshot rugby approach. Do you think it's a realistic approach? I love his enthusiasm. I love that he's got a theme that he keeps going back to. I just think that's good for us. Yes,
that's right. So Project Moonshot, for those that didn't know what it was, it's a really interesting project. There's a beautiful website. You can go to it, moonshot.rugby. And basically, it is after the ambitious goal where the US space program wanted to put a person on the moon, their long-term plan focused on a sustainable a pipeline to get there. So this is a similar thing with a rugby pipeline to get through. There's 3 different projects. There's Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo. And each one has its own task list as well if you go to the website. And really the goal for Scott Lawrence and his side is to develop talent and also put the right infrastructure to get in his goal. It's the semi-final of a World Cup in 2031. Now, what I would have probably done is I love goal setting. Firstly, let's go there. Put out your audacious, ridiculous goals, and then worry about how you're going to get them later, how you're going to achieve them. I would have said a quarterfinal would be the goal, like Japan did at their own World Cup where they hosted in 2019, because just to get to a quarterfinal, by the way, you probably would have had to have beaten 2 of your opponents in the pool stages, which one of them will be in the top 10 in the world. And so that is pretty remarkable. It might even be 2, because if you are, let's say, the US and you're ranked about 15th, you're probably going to have higher ranked opponents in your pool. So just to get there, enough in itself is remarkable. To get to a semi-final, that is like Japan. They faced South Africa, who were the champions, who became the Rugby World Cup champions. So either way, I'm not going to fault him for the goal, but I'm really happy that step 1 on that project has been checked off and they're going to the World Cup in Australia.
So how much do you see the importance of MLR to Project Moonshot being?
Great question. And I like how you just throw me a soft one to start out, it is, you're right. So Let's wind back a bit, though. Go to previous Rugby World Cups when MLR didn't exist. I remember covering a lot of rugby in the US, and all our players were playing in Europe. They were playing, either in the Prem, top 14 or elsewhere, against obviously world-class opponents and with world-class opponents. Even with that in place, the US at the 2011 Rugby World Cup won one game, and that was against Russia. And that, to this day, is the last win at a Rugby World Cup for the men's side. So that kind of gives us a sense. So playing with and against the world's best. Cut to MLR has now been going for a number of years. Some teams have folded, some teams have been added. The one addition which I love is Anthem Rugby being added, all American players or mostly American players, particularly with younger players coming through with the emphasis there. And while they might not have won a game in MLR, it is the best development tool we have going for us at the higher level. They've played some very close games and they've produced some excellent rugby. Speaking to Scott about that, Scott Lawrence did say, he said, listen, it is so great that we can now field almost all American players in a team. There's a lot of learning lessons because, when you're young and ambitious, you want to, for example, on attack, run from everywhere, right? So, but when you go to an international game, you can't. You have to play territory and you have to play your strategies and kind of get that in place. So it's a good little working tool. MLR, I don't think initially had the same alignment. Well, most people can say it didn't have the same alignment as our national team in that they were an entity, a business entity looking to perhaps get more people to watch, to have a really good product. And so the two goals were not aligned. MLR has recently had conversations where they apparently will reduce the number of international players per team that plays. So out of a match 15, for example, we used to have some teams field 12 non-American players, 12 internationals. Now maybe they will field 5. So that is good. So to answer your question, the direction I think MLR is going is more domestic players will get a chance, and that's important because you can't have your domestic players just coming off the bench or just playing for a few minutes. While it's great they get to play alongside international legends, they need game time, particularly in the pivotal positions. So a long-winded answer, it's going in the right direction. Anthem is there already. I think that's a great World Rugby funded initiative alongside with USA Rugby to get more Americans playing time. But I still think there is a long way to go because, like you just pointed out, you need to play together. Your key positions need to play together. If you look at any other country in the world, why are they in the top 10? Well, their domestic players either play together or play in a brilliant competition that they're playing most of the minutes throughout the season.
Yeah, very good. You mentioned teams folding and you mentioned being in San Diego. What is the mood around San Diego rugby with the whole California Legion merger? Or can you speak to that?
I can speak to that. And you keep coming at me with some great questions, and I do appreciate that. I moved here literally the week or two after the team announced that there was going to be the merger. So disappointing, I would say, was the first reaction. There were a lot of people up in arms in San Diego, friends of mine that followed the Legion since day one. And I can understand why. San Diego is a small, beautiful community that actually has a lot of rugby, a lot of youth rugby, a lot of teams play, and they would eventually funnel up to the Legion or at least watch and support and try play for them. So the fact that that team has relocated and a lot of players have lost their jobs, a lot of families are now without a team. Even though I know that as a premise, the California Legion put out the news that they will play a couple of games out here and a few games maybe in Orange County and some in LA. That's kind of disastrous because when you support a team, you want to be able to go to all their home games. And there are only 8 home games in the traditional season as it's been with the number of teams. So that's not a large number to kind of build a fan base. And I think San Diego's done one of the better jobs. New England's another team that has done a wonderful job of engaging the community and having their games there. So it is disastrous, I would say. And speaking to the people out here, there's so much rugby, but only having 2 home games and then having to travel up, I don't think these fans will travel up there. Likewise, I don't think any LA fans, because again, LA was not a well-attended sports market. And it's the same reason why I don't think the LA Sevens should be in Los Angeles. The USA Sevens needs to be in another city where people can actually visit and go to and support. I remember working the Las Vegas Sevens, and while Vegas is not a rugby destination in terms of like competitiveness, in terms of what I mean by that is you're going to stay in these hotels, there people are smoking in their lobbies, there's a lot of drinking going on. As an athlete, that's not your venue, but as a fan, it is your venue because you can come in easy, cheap hotels. It's a great party location. And that's why Las Vegas had 80,000 attend over the 2-day event in years gone by. And LA has 3,000 to 5,000 maybe per day. And so you can see the stark difference there. So to answer your question, it's unfortunate times for rugby so far in California. I'm glad there's one team that will be playing. I do hope, though, that things things grow and we can potentially have a San Diego team down the line.
Thank you.
Those Legion fans were so great too. The
Yeah.
when we went to Chicago for the final a couple of years ago, all those Legion fans came wearing the full Roman armor, and we
Yes.
got to chat with those guys, and they were talking about what it's like trying to get through TSA with a sword.
No, that group is amazing, and I will say, like any fan of the teams, Miami as well, they started to have some real traction and get fans come out as well. It's sad, Nola, Houston. I really feel for all these teams and families that have embedded themselves in the community. They've come to support rugby, and whatever the reason for folks leaving, I can't speak to that. Of course, I know that teams are losing several million per year, so I can certainly understand that the long-term vision perhaps clashed with some of their goals as well, and also financially. When you probably presented initially when MLR came up with a plan in 2018 or 2017 or so, there probably was down the line saying, all right, now these are where our losses are going to start being reduced and potentially we're going to break even in these number of years. Down the line, we're going to get a profit. So, I can't speak to the financials of the sides, but I can understand why teams are pulling out.
Dallen, I'm not sure how closely you're able to follow the men's action this summer. Any players on your radar? Any USA men's players that you're kind of thinking, ooh, okay, we can expect something, especially by 2031, a player that this person might be featured prominently.
Yeah, that's a good question. It's interesting when I did speak to Scott Lawrence about the depth chart, because let's be honest, most of the players that are playing now currently won't feature at a World Cup that the US hosts in 2031. So you've got to look at the younger generation. He mentioned a couple of players, Dom Bisog, the college player, Spencer Huntley playing in the UK. He mentioned a couple of young players coming through. And I bet you a lot of players that aren't on our personal radar that we may not have seen now that will come through later, which I find is fascinating. So when the World Cup was awarded to the USA, I forget exactly what year it was, but I remember somebody said to me, that a player now that's 12 years old is a player that will probably be playing at that World Cup. Mm-hmm. So, it's kind of funny to look at the pipeline and down the line. I didn't get to watch all the games. It's hard when you work in rugby, you focus on where your job takes you. You don't always get to see all the international games. But I know you watched it all. So which players stood up for you?
No, you already mentioned him. Kolye and I have gone on at length about Ben Lasag. Just really great. And I was I was worried about Mitch Wilson for a while. He's kind of come back around. But again, like you said, these aren't the players we're going to see in 2031. The West Coast Sevens this past weekend, all I could think was, how many of these names and faces am I going to be seeing in 6 years?
That's a great point. And that's the great thing is we need more high-level competitions, whether it's sevens or 15s, like the Rugby Town Sevens, for these American players to be seen. Because once you're on the radar, then you get into the system, which is great. And Scott was saying they do have a pretty robust youth and high school selection process, training camps for identifying players coming through. Because at the end of the day, when you're the national coach, yes, your job is to obviously result-wise for the national team, but your job really is to get that next level player coming through the system and getting them in, having the right coaches in place, playing the right game plan, so that when they come to you or to an Anthem team, they're raring to go and you don't have to do too much with that player.
What is our best American sport that can feed into rugby? Americans all think rugby is American football without pads. But so we end up, a lot of students go into football. But when we're looking at the Eagles, we see track athletes, we see hockey players. What are the best sports that can support the skills that you end up needing if you are going to enter at, a little older age and really try to become a successful player?
Yeah, in the 15-a-side game, I've noticed some of the better players come from wrestling. And so those players really tremendous at the breakdown, tremendous in the tackle technique, and that sort of stuff. In my sevens days, track and field was a popular sport that players came through, the Colin Isles of the world, Perry Baker, and things like that. Sevens is a bit easier, though, to transition, and you don't need some of those breakdown techniques and set pieces as well. But I think even former football players that are used to at least some sort of contact as well, I think is good. But wrestling for me has really seen a lot of good players come through as well. And there's a couple in the US team currently as well that have come through from that wrestling program too.
One day when I was talking to Alex Magleby, the CEO of the Free Jacks, he was talking about, what it's like trying to get parents to believe that I should send my kid to rugby. There's a lot of bad press about, CTE, the dangers of American football. Rugby is a less dangerous sport statistically. But the messaging has always been, oh, if you were tough, you wouldn't play football, you'd play rugby. Give blood, play rugby. The messaging has always been super macho, super, aggressive. I think they might have missed a trick because Alex is telling me how, like, if you're worried about your kid playing football because they might get hurt, going to them and saying, "Oh, instead of that, they should play this other sport that you think is the same, but they won't wear a helmet." It's a tough sell.
It really is. When I chat to a lot of, like on the plane this past weekend, chatting to people that know a little bit about rugby, that don't know much, and I always say to them that rugby is safer because you aren't wearing helmets or pads, and that shocks people straight away. And they're like, "I don't understand." I'm like, "Well, because you're never going to lead with your head if you're not wearing a helmet. So you lead with your shoulders, and you need to obviously get taught the right techniques at a young age, and then you will avoid getting knocked and stuff like that. But you're right. If parents are worried about collision sports, there are non-contact forms of rugby as well. Flag X or touch or other forms which are really great as well. But you're right, it is a safer sport. There's still going to be collisions, but far less, because you're never leading with your head, or never taught to lead with your head, unless you want to get knocked out type thing. So I think that's kind of a perception that needs to change. The old school thing about rugby being a drinking sport and giving blood and playing rugby, you're right. Those stigmas need to go away with the old crop, and the younger crop need to understand that rugby has a potential to get you a full scholarship to university, whether you're a young girl coming through or a young boy coming through, and you have a higher percentage to do that than any other American sport. So it is a good option for that as well. People are looking for the future. Also, to work in the game and other things, so there are more and more positions becoming available as well. Like you find in broadcasting and things like that, there are ways to be connected to the sport of rugby, and it's international rugby community. I think that's the biggest sell for it. Like you can go anywhere in the world, mention rugby, and all of a sudden, make new friends, join a rugby club, even if you don't play for their team. You just, hey, I'm a big rugby fan.
Another great selling point he told me about is, if you are playing American football, by the time you're maybe 11, it's likely that you will know, I'm never touching the ball again. I'm never going to throw the ball. I'm never going to catch the ball. I'm never going to run with the ball. And in rugby, every single person has to do all those things. That's a message I think we need to do a better job of broadcasting.
No, you're so right. And it equates to life as well. You have to do everything on the rugby field. You have to do everything in life as well. You can't rely on other people for certain things. You need to upskill yourself to be able to do it all. You're so right.
I could use special teams. That'd be cool. I need a special teams group I could sub in every now and then.
Now, I do want to say something, because we're talking about the USA men's kind of side of things. I just saw that AJ McGinty, after this past weekend, is injured and he's out probably for about 9 months with an Achilles injury. So that is a position. I was asking Scott, are we developing good, strong American scrum offs and fly offs yet? And his answer was not quite yet. At the highest level. So that is an interesting thing. And with AJ out now, maybe we see some more American players coming through as well, filling those key positions.
Yeah, we saw in the Samoa match, Luke Carty coming on for injury for Hilsenbeck and doing a pretty good job.
Yeah.
However, he's still probably he'll definitely make the next World Cup if he stays this way, but will he be there for 2031? I don't know. And I don't know who is coming down below him.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. And that's kind of where that next generation of player needs to come through. And, we'll see what Anthem has, what kind of couple of fly-offs or 3 fly-offs do they have in their mix coming through as well. And the same for the scrum off role as well. We've got I know there's De Haas and a few others, but 1 or 2 others in the squad, we're getting a bit older. So we've got to look to the future for sure.
I love Ruben De Haas, and he's been doing well. AJ, I always felt like AJ was a microcosm of USA rugby, because he's off getting all this experience, great experience overseas at the highest level, and he comes back, and the Eagles are kind of and from where I sit, and I'm not an expert, he looks like he's trying too hard. It looks like he's doing too much. Like he spends too much time on the ground, and then he ends up getting hurt. And I feel like I think he's tried to take everything in his own hands. Like, okay, guys, I'll do it for us. And I think that tends to backfire. Maybe this is a blessing in disguise.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, because also Scott Lawrence was saying different scrum halves play differently, with different fly-offs, and the backline adjusts differently too, depending on the style of the fly-off and how they play. Now, of course, AJ is the most experienced fly-off we've ever had, really, type thing. So you're right. He's probably going to do a bit too much himself. At the same time, his body is pretty banged up from playing all this rugby in the Prem and overseas also. Yeah. So that's one thing which I think the balance of that is quite difficult to get, when players know that, hey, listen, I need to help my country qualify for Rugby World Cup. I'm going to put 110% in. But at the same time, my body is probably feeling pretty shattered. And so you're right. Players like that are overplayed. And so it's interesting to see, can we get some younger players in those positions down the line? But at the same time, it's tough, right? Because you want to win your international matches leading up to these events, and not just blood every young player you can under the sun just to get them experience.
And what about the women's Eagles? I'm not going to lie, I'm still fuming about the way we exited this World Cup. But on the other hand, I see a lot of potential, serious potential, especially with some of our younger players.
Yes, the Women's World Cup was a fascinating one, wasn't it? And particularly with the US team also. I mean, that thrilling game against the Wallaroos of Australia, down to the wire. It's so crazy that then you go back and look and go, okay, well, that was the difference. If the Eagles, could have won that game, then they would have gone through type thing. But the way they ended against Samoa was brilliant. I know they needed to chase a high score. It was pretty tough to do. It is sad to go out on a big victory because you don't often find that, right? You in a World Cup, you probably lost a pool game, and that's why you're out, right? So that was an interesting way to go around. But you could see, how good England is and Canada. Canada, to me, again, played unbelievably well, and the fact that they had to fund half the way to get there and things like that. Yeah, it's sad for the US. I'm happy for Canada. At least there was one North American team in there contesting for the cup. But as a US fan, and with Alona Mar as well, I mean, she again, just everybody watching, following her, and selling out stadiums. There's a lot of buzz around it. I do worry about the Eagles' future in the women's game as well, because of course, to try catch those top teams, we know the US can be there or thereabouts, but they're a bit off the mark right at the moment.
Kolye and I've spent a lot of time already talking about Koulibaly. She's one of our exciting young players. I don't know if you got a chance to highlight her at all over this World Cup, or any other players that kind of made you go, "Oh, gee, who's she?"
Yeah, so I didn't get a chance to cover the World Cup, so just as a fan, got to watch as well. But yeah, there was some really standout players, and she was definitely one of them as well. It's exciting, right? There's some exciting players coming through, that's for sure. But I think what is tricky is the mistakes, right, along the way as the team gets attacking, gets momentum, and things like that. So it's kind of hard when you play against England and you're kind of not really in the game, and stuff like that. So that's tough. And the same thing I think happened at the last World Cup as well.
Well, you already mentioned her, Alona Mar. You've met her. You told me a great story once about her walking you to your car. Uh, she had some good performances in this tournament, despite the final results. You and I have talked about this before. In the USA, is sevens, just destined to be sort of the pathway to the 15s? Is this our feeder system?
Yeah, I think sevens can be used as a feeder system and has been used as a feeder system with many countries successfully. It really is a way to get a player that, I talk about that high level experience, right? Because you play a lot of sevens games. There's a lot of time and space for these players to develop with ball in hand and on the defensive side of things and get to represent a country on a big stage. So, to get those kind of jitters out in sevens, I think is really fantastic because when you get to 15s, it's a bit easier. Now, all of a sudden, you can exploit space and gaps that you have been doing in the game of sevens. I think it's pretty nice as well, particularly as the US has done so well in sevens, particularly in the women's side of things. It is something we need to continue to develop and grow because imagine getting on the podium again and even going better, going into the final type thing. So many people I speak to that don't know much about rugby, they know the US women's sevens. And so that is kind of that. I think that's our ticket, right? 15s in men's and 15s is tough to crack, for the US men's, it's tough to crack the top 10. For the US women's, tough to crack the top 4 or 6 or so. So if sevens, I think, is our pathway. And it is a much easier transition from another sport to come play sevens, to try it out, to kind of pick up the game there. I think it's a great entry point into the sport for fans and for players.
And it's so short, which
sorry.
is also one of the big sells, especially at school age. It's short. You can play it in a weekend, have a ton of different games. You can have a bunch of people get playing time. And with the attention spans that people have now, sevens is also made for creating highlights.
I agree. Sevens is my favorite game, and I make no bones about it. It's such an exciting sport because normally with two very good teams, it'll be decided in the final play of the game. Who has possession, who can score, who can hold on, who can defend. And then often in the knockout games, you go into extra time, sudden death, extra time. Who doesn't love that? But you're right. And it's contrasting styles of play. I'm not a fan of what World Rugby's done in terms of the structure of the current sevens game, but that's out of my pay grade. All I can do is support the game, love the game, know that when I was playing, my favorite thing was now we're playing against Kenya. And then in an hour and a half time, we're playing against Chile. And now we're taking on New Zealand. It's like all these different countries all at the same place playing each other. And my father-in-law, who'd never watched rugby before, he was enthralled. He couldn't believe it. He's like, holy smokes, I get to watch all these great teams. And it is fast. Literally 20 minutes, you're done, you're out of there. And then you get to watch the next game or go to the beer garden or go enjoy it or wear some fancy colors. It's just it's a festival nature, which I think is so cool about it as well.
Especially when the Kenyans show up.
Yes, 100%. They're the best.
Yeah. Yeah. So, question for you.
Hmm.
You've covered tournaments all over. We offline, myself and David, have been talking with a few other people about how we could make a tournament that the US and people around us could latch onto. So, kind of taking the Pacific Nations Cup type thing and
Hmm.
making it better. How would you do that? What would you do?
Yeah, good question. In terms of, are you talking about making it better, like getting more people there to watch and kind of support and rally around it, or what do you
Making
mean?
more or getting more people there to watch, also
Mm,
having it like closer games, because right now
yeah,
Fiji just kind of destroys half. Fiji and Japan are the
yeah,
class
they
of the
are.
Pacific Nations Cup, and then there's a giant drop off.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. So the first question to answer about, how do you create an atmosphere and a vibe? So I think with the sevens, for example, I think it like needs to move out of Los Angeles, go somewhere great. I heard Nashville, Tennessee could be up there, and that's great. A destination where people want to go travel to. They know they can have, kind of a fun party with their friends and that sort of thing. I would also center a lot of it around getting and giving out free tickets to young kids, young boys and girls with their parents and families to come and watch the game as a demo. So I know, like, Imagine Rugby is doing a good job in certain cities, growing the game at elementary and middle school level. Play Rugby USA is a program I used to work with back in the day, based out of New York. They do a wonderful job in their region, and so does there's a program in Chicago as well that does stunning work. So I think what if we can connect with schools nearby, these are elementary, middle, and high schools, and rally around them and get them all to the game and with their parents, so they can first see what this game's all about. I think that's number one. Number two, making it a fun destination, like I said, that people can come to and enjoy the festivities. When you're talking about the competitiveness of an event, that's hard. Like, for example, in the PNC, because those are the countries playing, right? Same with the Rugby World Cup. Even a Rugby World Cup, I was looking at some of the results of the Women's World Cup. There were a few games that were, you can call them blowouts, right? So one team would win by 60 points. So that's tough. But at the same time, you never know what the competitiveness is going to be at an event. But the only thing you can control is the environment around it, how you promote it, and how you kind of get people there. I think it's more important to have a packed stadium, whether it's a 5,000 or 20,000 stadium, than sell high price tickets and only get half full, or get 20 people there. So my goal would be to create the energy, the buzz, even if you have to pay for people not to be there, but to encourage them to be there by putting on things that they enjoy and linking up with other events. I've seen, like, Dubai Sevens is a good example. They basically have cricket on the go. They've got netball for women's teams there. They've got all these other interesting sports that happen around about the same weekend as the rugby. Everybody gets tickets to come and watch the rugby when they finish. So all these events lead up to, okay, now we're done with our fun events. We can go to the beer garden. If we don't drink, no problem. There's stuff for kids as well. There's a little swimming pool. There's slides, all activities for parents. There's stuff for people that don't have kids. Then they will funnel into the rugby itself. So it's a packed stadium. Everybody's loving it. So that's kind of the way to do it. It's more of a festival kind of thing. You can do it in 15s also. And so that's kind of what I would promote.
In the USA, Dallen, are we balancing the sevens and 15s correctly? My limited understanding is in Australia, the relationship between the sevens program and the 15s program is adversarial. Is the USA doing that right? Are we in concert?
I think there becomes a point in time when I was playing, it was okay for your 7-a-side players to play both, and you needed them to play both. So we had Chris Wiles, Todd Clever, Taku Nguyen. A lot of guys were in our sevens team, but they would play 15s when the 15s test matches came around. So, and you can cross between the codes fairly easily. Now, in today's age, it's more difficult to cross over between the two because your body shape and physique need to be slightly heavier for 15s. Sevens is obviously a lot more about fitness and that sort of thing. So it is a bit more difficult to go across the two codes. Other countries use it as a development tool to see players and say, okay, this player could be good, like a Corey Toole of Australia. Now we can slot him in, or Leroy Carter for New Zealand, Cheslin Colby for South Africa. Those kind of players come through. I'm talking about the men's side of things. I think there's a hard balance now where the sevens programs, they obviously need to be successful as well. They can't just be a breeding ground. I'm talking about the USA now, for players to develop the players and then they're gone, right? Then they need to start again and start fresh. So that is harder. So I know Emily Bidwell and Zach Test, they obviously want to keep their players together because you keep the chemistry of the team together, especially in sevens, you're going to see results on the World Series. So I think that is a fine balance. I don't know what the relationships are like between sevens and 15s in the US now, currently, as we speak. But I know that they do need to be open lines a bit more ahead of like a World Cup or a pinnacle event. And I'm talking like a year out, because you can't just drop the player in pretty soon. But they need about a year to get adjusted to the patterns and the style of that. So, for example, if you look at the calendar, we have the Men's Rugby World Cup coming in 2027. So obviously for the men's side of things, that does need to be the focus. But then the following year, you've got the Olympics in 28 for both the women and men's sevens. And then you can go into the women's 15s after that in Australia in 2029. So it is a balancing act, because at this point in time, there is only a certain number of international players for the women's and the men's squads, whereas other countries probably have a greater number of players that could represent in both codes.
As our World Cup came to an end, our coach said a fond goodbye and rode off into the sunset after almost exactly 1 year. Dallen, consistency and experience are often the determining factors in successful rugby. Are you concerned about the revolving door to our women's coaches?
Yes, I'm concerned. I do think, like the other programs, the men's 15s and the women's sevens and the men's sevens, there are now former US internationals are coaching the team, American coaches. I think that's great. I think if we can, where possible, if they have enough experience, and if they don't have enough experience, then I would pair them nicely with the, let's say an international coach coming in for them to take over, so that they're basically in a place to groom the coach to take over then, closer to the World Cup or at the next World Cup cycle. But it's tough. We saw it in the men's 15s. If you keep having international coaches come in, they take a while, like I did when I arrived 20 years ago. It takes you a few years just to get used to the landscape, getting used to what sort of people are we dealing with, what sort of geographical challenges are we dealing with. I mean, Simon M was a good example. Came in with a sevens program, also left very briefly after taking over as well. It's not ideal. You kind of want a coach in place that knows the landscape, that knows the players, and that sort of thing. And also, if you are paying big money for an international coach for the US national teams, I think that money could be spent, some of that money could be spent elsewhere in recruiting and developing and going on tours, and not paying your coach the top end of the salary compared with other nations, but knowing it's going to be an American international coach, but we're going to use some of the money to develop players in the program. That's probably a better spend.
Where am I here? I'm just looking at the clock. I want to make sure I'm respectful of your time. Brass tacks, Dallen, I'm officially handing you ultimate authority over all things USA Rugby. We have a men's World Cup in 6 years. We have a women's World Cup in 8. Now that you're the big boss, what are your top 3 priorities for these programs?
Wow, I mean, that's a quick job. I didn't even apply for it, and I got it. Okay.
we really needed it.
That's right. There we go. Exactly. I think the key to all of this, again, stems to growing the game at a grassroots level and an age grade level. And there's a lot of programs in place already, which is great. I would try to get the programs in every single US state. Rugby is played, during PE. Rugby is played at, during not break times, but after school in elementary and middle school. Because number one, the game itself is very exciting. Like we said, everybody does everything. Everybody's involved. There also is, you can play co-ed in a safe environment as well. You can use flags, you can use tags, or just touch rugby as well. So those kind of things. And then the life lessons you get from the sport, I think, are tremendous as well, and the opportunities for overseas. So with all those reasons, I would try and introduce that sport at those levels all around. And then I think that the US is doing a decent job when players do play rugby and express interest of getting them in the systems. There needs to be more funding and more corporate money coming in as well to help them travel and tour, which we're starting to see, which is great. I mean, my first rugby tour was as a 12-year-old South African. I got a chance to go play rugby in Italy with my under 13 team. Wow. We had an overseas tour. We played against 4 or 5 Italian teams. We got hosted by them, so we got to make new friends. We didn't speak any Italian, but they taught us a little bit. So that was a life-changing tour, and I was 12 years old, and it was because of rugby. We went in high school again. We went to the UK, to England after that. And so all these opportunities are through the sport of rugby. That's how I ended up in America, was through the sport of rugby. So I think, if those things can slowly start to take hold, more and more people see the game as well. I think the other thing I would change is I would put the games not behind a paywall, the USA games. That includes 7s and 15, so people can watch freely and get to see the games. Because, by the way, we haven't made any money from broadcasting, which other nations do. And I'm talking about USA Rugby. And so that is a key entity for people to see the game. So it's number one, play the game at a young age. Number two, you can watch the game on TV, and then you got your heroes. Like people watch all the other sports, they watch and like, I want to be a Steph Curry. I want to be this person or that person in NFL. Same thing for rugby. So those are 2 major things I would change. And the third one, gee, I don't know if we have time for the third one. Let's think. I would probably try to invest a bit more in, backing and creating people that are in the sport that are talking so well about it. Like Alona Mar has done it by herself. She's done it by herself, and you can see what effect she's had on the game. Just one person. It is remarkable to see, but I would try invest a bit more in that area of the game so we can, tell stories and connect with people from all walks of life. I think that's a thing which we don't touch on. People from all different backgrounds play this game, and that's unique. It's not just a person. It's not just a white collar sport. It's not just a certain community sport. It's anybody and everybody plays rugby, and we need to showcase that diversity.
My friends, I just want to take a moment to remind you all that liking and subscribing is the best way to help us grow. If you could tell a friend or two, that would be smashing. We are part of the Global Gainline Network. We're incredibly grateful for your ongoing support. We just surpassed 750 subscribers on YouTube. So thanks once again to all of you. We really appreciate it. Dallen, our men don't play again until they face Scotland on November 1st. I won't be seeing that game as it happens because I'm going to be in Chicago watching Ireland versus New Zealand.
Either of you going to be there? I'll see you there for a beer in Chicago. Can't wait. Bring the missus along. She has seen her first international rugby game live in 15s was the last time they met in 2016 when Ireland won. Yep. So she'll be back.
So she's used to Ireland just easily winning these games against the All Blacks.
Exactly. Right.
Dallen, my friend, you are a man made of magic. We're so thankful that you've carved out some time to chat today. Before I let you go, I want to be sure to adequately cover all the multitudinous projects you've got coming up. You've got a new show that I stumbled across just entirely by chance, the Athletes Lounge on Flow Rugby. You've got new cohorts for your broadcast commentary program. There's an incredible sevens tournament you're going to be calling. Where do you even want to start?
Sure. Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Let's start with the Athletes Lounge on Flow Rugby. So it's a brand new show, and it basically showcases all the brilliant content that Flow Rugby has. So they've got the Premiership for the first time, the URC, Top 14, Super Rugby, and then the Rugby Championship and a bunch of other great content. So the show basically is like the Manning Cast concept. So, a few of us in studio out of the Austin, Texas studios, talking a bit and bantering and making fun, even having a few drinks here and there. Avant Brandy gets opened as well, which is pretty great. So we're going to be back in studio for the South Africa Los Pumas Rugby Championship final, and it's just kind of a cool concept. I think all these things you need to try them out, right? Which is great. So we've obviously, we've done the commentating side of things. Now you get to chat to your friends while the game's going on as well, and obviously a bit of banter there as well. So flowrugby.com, people can check that out. And then the broadcasting,
it had kind of an NFL red zone kind of feel to it too.
Yes, exactly. Listen, I think the first one we did was kind of tricky because they had two games on the go. I'd prefer one game, so it's a bit easier to focus on that game, and also for the audience to watch as well, because your screens are being split between the guests as well. And we had Todd Clever on last week, which is great. Joe Tafate, Scott Lawrence, and this weekend we've got some exciting guests. Gareth Reese from Canada joins us as well, and he was just at the Women's World Cup, so be good to have him on the show as well, which is pretty cool, And then the broadcasting program, you took the course as well. I think it's when I started out in the commentating world, nobody helped me out. I didn't get any guidance from anybody, so it's kind of a nice way for me to be helped the next generation of commentators. Got people as young as 14, people into their 60s that are taking the online kind of course, so you can take it from anywhere in the world. And recently I partnered up with the Rugby Tens organization, so a lot of their students are taking the course, and then Rugby Academy Ireland. I just did a class with them earlier today, so it's great to spread the love of media, commentating, podcasting, and kind of all that.
As you mentioned, I am a graduate of the broadcast commentary course. I can attest, it really gave me the confidence to go out there and make a complete ass of myself. So it was great.
No, well, what I will say is it's cool. So you and 3 others got a chance to now commentate, events that are on the go as well, the West Coast Sevens and a few other events. And I think that's great. You're being too hard on yourself. Don't forget, when we started out, we were terrible. So like you can only start out better than that, which is awesome. And then, listen, I want to say the last thing is the Algarve Sevens. So this will be my third year commentating and being an ambassador for the tournament. It is an unbelievable sports festival on the coastline in Portugal. Beautiful region in the Algarve. It's called Sevens in the Sun, but there are 8 sports. So basically, at that whole weekend festival, there are a couple of beach parties to open things out. Then there's rugby sevens for men and women. There's netball, there's golf, beach hockey, beach tennis, padel, open water swimming, and lacrosse. And then there's a great after party as well. So it's an unbelievable event. I bring the missus every year. Tom Mitchell, I commentate with him for that. He pops over from the UK. We had quite a few American teams come across this past year. So it's an unbelievable event. If teams want to enter, they just need to message me, and Washka will be sharing a few beverages on the beach.
My American's going to show here pretty strongly, but netball. Ugh, God.
It's harder than
I was going to
it's
make the
harder than it
same
looks.
comment with
Yeah.
lacrosse.
Yeah. Well,
It's like
lacrosse is
if you
new.
took
Yeah.
basketball
Yeah.
and just reached in and ripped its soul out, you got yourself your netball.
Well, I'll tell you what. So there is a video we did. We've quickly filmed with the videographers. We're there to promote the tournament last year, and they got me just doing a quick action in every single sport. All right. So there wasn't lacrosse, that's new this year, but the other sports. So like golf, I putted something for the thing. Beach hockey, smashed the ball, and all the way it came to netball, and they teed me up, and I went for the shot. I missed it, but the camera person lingered, didn't even just cut before the shot goes in, and saw me miss, and then cut back to me. It was a shocker. So it's the only one I wasn't able to do.
Classic.
Yeah.
My friends, this was amazing. Thank you so much for your time. Any last thoughts before we call a full lid?
No, listen, I want to appreciate both of you, and I know you got a third member as well, Juliet, for showcasing American rugby, the women's game, the men's game, and just kind of covering it as you do. You volunteer your time and energy and effort and enthusiasm, and I think that's the key to growing the game as well. Like I mentioned, getting it out there to new people, but the people that are engaged, like yourself, really go above and beyond, and that's wonderful to see. And I know you're now commentating as well, which is great. So you just multi-talented, and it's brilliant to see you contribute to the game this way.
As always, thanks to Lee, Hugh, and all the folks at the Wrap. Thanks to all of you for coming along and watching or listening. We're on YouTube. We're on all the usual platforms for audio pods as well. So if you can help out by spreading the word, that would be phenomenal. Dallen Stanford, thank you so much. You are the best. Until next week, everyone, from all of us, cheers. Thanks to you all, and be well.